Welcome to Manifest Marriages. We've been excited to do this. We've got some questions we're going to ask each other. I don't know her questions and she doesn't know mine. So, we've had a little prayer before we started. So, I'm going to do ladies first. That's pretty safe.
Okay, ladies first.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So my first question about marriage for you is, do you think that marriage is for everyone? And how did you know it was right for you?
That's a good question. They're so good. I think you're gonna make me forget mine. I'm trying to hang on to mine. So, first question was, is marriage for everyone?
Yes.
The simple answer is no. And it's not, for a lot of different reasons. But the biblical reason, Paul gave some really good guidance with marriage, particularly in Corinthians, his letter, first and second letter. And one of the things that he brought up was that there really is a grace for people who want to be celibate, who want to, or God is called to be celibate, rather.
Yeah.
And grace is very important because it kind of helps soften that longing that you would normally have. Without the grace, it's very, very difficult if you want to be married, but you're trying to practice celibacy. But grace from heaven is this invisible, beautiful, wonderful substance, holy substance that enables us to do things that we cannot do. I call it the grease on the gears of life.
Yeah.
So I would say yes, there are definitely people who will not get married, or the other way to say that is no, everyone is not
Meant for marriage.
There you go.
How did you know it was right for you is the second part of that question.
Very good question. How did I know it was good, right for me? Ever since I was young, I kind of had, I thought about having children and family and that kind of thing. I thought about being single a few times, but I wasn't graced to do it. I think that's one of the answers. But, I knew I was supposed to marry you because God made that very clear. And I know we're not talking about being unequally yoked and all that. That may come up later.
Yeah.
But, for me, it was right for me. I think, I've been single half my life. So, we've been married 19 years, 19 plus. And so eventually it's going to get to a point where I'll be married longer than I've been single.
Yeah.
So it seems to be working. Yeah.
All right, so what's your first question?
All righty, it's a two-parter as well.
Wow.
It's similar too.
Huh.
And I have to make sure I have it. Marriage. Oh, I know what it was now. Why do you think people are so interested in marriage, whether they're single or married? Why do you think that's such a interest for people? Or I should say, do you think it's an interest? And if you think that, why? Does that make sense? Is that better?
I think so.
Yeah, for singles and married people, do you think marriage is a topic that people are interested in? And if yes or no, why?
That is an interesting question, and I think that the answer is layered. I don't think that's an easy, simple yes or no answer to that. I think in some circles and some cultures, marriage is a very big deal. It's very prominent. It's very out there first. I mean, and foremost, it's just expected, like, for you to get married. Unfortunately, we're living in society right now that is putting so much emphasis on casual sex. And one thing that really started in our generation when we were younger, even a little bit before us, but really getting prominent in the media and all that, entertainment as we were growing up, that breaking down of the marriage, like just the beauty of it and the consistency of it. And I mean, like, there's been things that have happened in marriage that have not been great over the years, but at the same time, like, the institution of marriage was ordained by God, so we know it's a great thing. The family unit is ordained by God, so we know it's a great thing. So I think, one of our first commands was for Adam and Eve to be together as helpmate, Adam and then his helpmate Eve, and then for them to be fruitful and multiply. So I think it is a longing of the spirit, because that's us fulfilling what God has called humans to do, is to be fruitful and multiply. But at the same time, when this culture of casual sex and everything that's like always just sex, I mean, like everything sexualized to the nth degree, I really hold that scripture in the Song of Solomon where the girls are talking to the beloved and they're like, do not awaken love until it so desires.
Yeah.
And I think we really need a little bit of that more today, honestly, because it might not be so much geared towards marriage, but it's definitely geared towards the relationship and being together. It's just out there first and foremost on almost like everything. Like, oh, you don't have to be married to do this, and it like to be involved sexually, and that's not okay. It's not healthy, first of all. Casual sex is not healthy, and it just is like, we really need, I think, a resurgence of that, of not awakening the sexual appetite until marriage, because there's so much out there trying to reel people in to go ahead and do it before they're married, and to be coupled, to live together before they're married, to give it a trial run and all, and that's just none of that. I haven't seen one instance where that's really helped a marriage, to be honest with you. I can't think of one. I can't think of one person who lived together before they got married and it turned out good. So
personally, you mean?
Personally, yeah, I cannot think of one personal example that I know. But at the same time, that doesn't mean they're not out there. So I don't want people to get upset. Well, I've been married 80 years and we lived together.
Really?
But you know what I mean. Like,
no,
I'm saying, it's just not.
Yeah, with what you've seen, it doesn't add anything to
no, because
longevity of marriage.
Yeah, having that exit door is never a good idea for marriage. That a divorce is not, like having that thought pattern towards, oh, if it doesn't work out, I can get divorced. It's just never, it's not a good thought process to have in marriage. And yeah, I think the emphasis can be there, especially, I think for women more than men, to be honest.
The more that for or against?
For, that longing to have a family, to get married and have a family, to be a mom, so I do think, so like I said, it's a layered answer, and it definitely, like I said, different cultures still place more emphasis on marriage than other cultures, so.
All right, well, let me ask this a different part of that. Today, 2022, why would people not want to be married? What are some reasons do you feel like, for men or women, the singles, where they said, I'm just not doing that?
I think because it's been so widely accepted to just live together, to sleep around before you're married, those things have definitely hindered the marriage institution. Divorce has hindered not just the thought process of I can get divorced, but children of divorce, they have such a hard time, I think, trusting spouses after seeing stuff that their parents have gone through. Sure. It's just really been detrimental to them. That doesn't mean that people who've been a product of a family that's gotten divorced haven't had really healthy marriages and gone on to have a healthy family. And when I say healthy, I mean they're committed to each other 100%. And honestly living godly. We're talking about godly marriages here, marriage in general, but when I say healthy, a godly marriage where two people are equally yoked and God ordained that marriage. Not every marriage is ordained by God.
Right.
And,
that's true.
And not every marriage that wasn't ordained by God isn't healthy. I feel like I'm getting myself into trouble by saying certain things.
It's very broad.
It's very broad. It's very broad. I mean, because this is not a one size fits all. It's not it's just, we are speaking in generalizations. So I just want to put, that is not by any way putting a box on anyone in marriage. But yeah, divorce is a biggie. Watching your family go through divorce, I know it's really hindered people. And then having a failed marriage and even wanting to get remarried, it still hinders. We know people that are I never want to get married again.
Yeah, and I mean,
You
even
know.
even as Christians in the church,
Yeah.
I mean, there was a real stigma. I don't know if it's as strong today in most denominations, but
I don't
real
think
big.
it's bad.
Yeah, I don't think it's as bad. But a big stigma back in the day of, if you had divorced, you couldn't be in any place of like leadership, or if you were a pastor or anything like that, leader, any kind of leader. So I think that's kind of faded, and I think people have gotten not just faded, but they've seen the heart of God in Scripture, and seen it for what Jesus was really saying about being reunited with your spouse and that kind of thing.
Well, the mercy of God is definitely there for
Yeah.
no matter what. I mean, like just people who've gone through a divorce and then become a Christian, and then get married again. It's just, like how can we put standards on that when it's not the same? You know what I mean? Like, so God's mercy is there to cover a multitude of sins. That's what I love about Him, and mercy triumphs over judgment. So none of these circumstances that are detrimental or unhealthy can't be undone, can't turn around, and God, because God works all things together for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purposes.
That's it.
So He is going to work things out, like even the negative things, including bad marriages, failed marriages, sex before marriage. Like He can change any of it and turn it into something wonderful and good. So that's important too.
Well, now that we've touched on, like, we both had two-part general questions. What's a question? Do you have a personal question for me, and I have a personal question for you? We could kind of
end on that.
Yeah.
Okay, my personal question for you is: did you feel like you were really prepared for marriage when we got married?
No.
I knew you were going to say that. Just because we've talked about it.
Yeah.
So.
It's unfair. She's cheating.
No.
No.
Like from past conversations.
No, I was not. Children are different, and I don't even know how much I was prepared for fatherhood. I just know that it just seemed easier in the sense of you're in a place of authority, and so they're looking to you. You have the final say. You've got as many answers as you can give at that point, and then you learn along the way. So it's different.
Yeah.
But with marriage, I would really encourage people to take 6 months of counseling from different people, possibly grandparents, your leaders, apostles, prophets, pastors, whatever your church model is, and have some pastoral type counseling, kingdom counseling.
Yeah.
And I would take your time. I would not be in any hurry to tie the knot, because marriage is an interesting thing, because it's not just in some kind of vacuum, but the pressure really is not applied until the ring is on, the rings are on, and then you're together, and it's legally binding, it's binding before God, and that instantly puts a layer of pressure that wasn't there previously. And so if there's junk in you, the good and the bad is going to come out, but the junk that's in you is going to arise
in that pressure cooker.
Yeah. If you have a long distance relationship and then you come together and you get married, or if you're trying your best to do it God's way, that means you're not living together. And if you're not living together and cating, as in fornicating, if you're not cating, then when you do come together, then you've got a lot. It's kind of like a shock. It's like, I didn't know you did put those towels up there like that, and your drawers are still on the floor. Whatever it is, and so yeah, I could have had a lot more of that, a lot more. I got books, but it was after I was married. After we got married, I got great books like Tender Warrior was a really good one. I want to read by that one actually.
Yeah.
There were a couple of really good ones. I take that back. I think I read Stu Weber's Tender Warrior pretty close to when we got married, because it became part of our vows. We had,
I do remember it being. I think it was after we were engaged for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, 'cause I remember it, like, you reading it while we were together. So.
Well, instead of reinventing the wheel, I'm going to ask you the same thing. Do you feel like you were prepared for marriage?
No.
Okay.
I think I thought I was, and reality hit pretty soon, where it was like, this, is a little bit different than what you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
And not that we were, I don't want to paint the wrong picture either, but at the same time, like you said, there are things that you think you have dealt with and you've put under the blood, and that you have, brought and submitted before God. Like, I never thought, hey, I'm going to have a trouble submitting to my husband. And, yeah, I had issues with, at times, like,
Yeah.
because you're just learning how to live with someone new, like in that, whenever you're living with someone for the first time and it's new, there's going to be a learning curve. And I don't think people really talk to us about the learning curve. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't like, because there's some people who've gotten together and it's never been a problem. You know what I mean? Where they had the grace and or they were just well prepared. You know what I mean? That's the only thing I could think. I think I had a false preparedness where I knew it was the right time, though. I don't think that we were supposed to wait or anything like that we missed some kind of timing. I think we definitely got married in God's time and in His purpose. But there were things I could have done to prepare myself, at least especially dealing with emotional baggage, I think, from, my own family's history and just different things, just that you see growing up and dealing with, and, just, like I said, two people coming together.
And I think our society lacks that communal sense, that family sense. Even though you and I, we both grew up in Monroe, parts of Monroe, and we both went to the same high school. We had shared a class together. I think there's something like the Jews had this thing of like, oh, that's Tommy's boy from the tribe of Benjamin, and you know him. We grew up together, whatever it was, and that's Sarah from. I think there was some
the families knew each other, and
they're being taught the same law. They're being, and I think that helped them to where marriage. It's a big deal, but the Bible doesn't. I'm almost kind of surprised sometimes, I've talked about this, that the Bible doesn't make like this huge, it doesn't go into great detail of like marriage is like a model for marriage or like a manual. Excuse me, there's even times in the Old Testament where when the Israelites came into a new place, the Lord was very like permissive. He was like, if you see someone who's fair, and you like her, marry the girl. And I was like, that's it? I mean, she's pretty, and that's it? I mean, it was very much, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Like with David and them, or even like in Judges.
The main thing was the Benjamites when they were like trying to restore their tribe.
Yeah, and they came out and they were dancing. And
I think that was a little bit of a special situation. But.
Well, yeah, but you don't. But there were others. Just to refresh
David
my
and
memory.
Abigail, she was like beautiful, and then Nabal died, and
but I feel like there's places. Now help me. I feel like there were some places where when the men of God, the armies of God would come, and God gave this instruction to her. It was like, if you find.
I thought that was just for Benjamin. Yeah.
See what the Bible said. You
read your Bible. Yeah.
I didn't read. You better get your thesaurus.
Know your Bible.
It's not a dinosaur. No.
Well, I mean, it wasn't. Well, the reason why I think there's a distinction too is because the Benjamites, they had been wiped out and they needed to replenish their tribe, and they were told to go to other tribes and to do that. Where if they came into a different area and they were wiping out like a different country, a lot of times it would be like, don't take a woman from there because she was.
Well, definitely, because she wasn't
Jewish, and they didn't want you to bring their other gods and things into the tribe. It was more of a holiness thing. So, so that's why I just think it might have been more, But it's definitely in there. It's in there.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. All right, so let's look New Testament, right? Even and Paul writes most of the letters in the New Testament, the stipulations don't seem to be, there's not a lot of Cosmo reading going on. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of red book. It's more like there's some positional things that he talks about, of husbands being the head of their household and the submission piece and laying down your life for your wife. But the inner working, like your favorite color, and if she does this and do this, and you need to take a break and eat this food, and it's all relationship. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, but marriage in the Bible, even the New Testament Bible, is much different than marriage today in that regards. Because I mean, you're getting into a lot of stuff where, I mean, women were not considered on equal footing. Do you know what I mean? Like in biblical times, so.
Yeah,
I don't.
but
I mean, there's still
but you don't
choice
think that
involved and stuff, but it just.
but in the kingdom there was equality. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. No male or female. No Jew or Gentile. No
No.
barbarian or Scythian.
Yeah, but yeah.
I
I just say yeah, but because historically there are some factors historically about men and women where it's not equal footing even in after post New Testament. So you're just getting that gets a little tricky, I guess I'm saying.
Yeah, but within God's family, there were
It's
definitely
supposed to be
criteria.
that, yeah, like
covering and things like that. But and my intent is even about, because I believe that's God's heart. God's heart is absolutely equality.
Yeah,
Even if people
yeah.
didn't follow through with that, I think that's on the people. But when I read Colossians 3 and Galatians 3, there's obvious. Paul was saying,
well, God. I mean, God never left women out, so it's not. I mean, even in Old Testament, we like to do that, but He definitely highlighted. I mean, some of the women that were in Jesus's line were not like even Israelites. So the Lord is all about grafting people in all the time.
Sure.
Gentiles grafted in. So His heart is definitely towards men and women serving Him and being coupled together and serving Him. Like, I mean, I know for us in our own marriage, we felt very strongly the call of God that, not only did we like each other and all of that great normal stuff, but we had that added, we really do believe that God has called us to be together. So I know anybody in the New Testament that had that in their marriage of like, hey, this is what God's called us to do together as a couple.
Yeah, and even more, I guess the point I'm kind of leaning into is like the inner workings of like the particulars. God seems to be pretty particular about other things.
Yeah,
like even
not
like
so much that.
Yeah, like even your gifting and protocol and gatherings and there's details. Take turns and this person is this. And in marriage, it's like, oh, they're married. And like Peter doesn't even mention his wife's name by name. Like he says, and she says hello. Like basically at the end of the letter, and it's like, okay, And it just seemed like there wasn't so much extra emphasis put on it, but it's the highest relationship aside from our relationship with the Lord.
Yeah.
So I find that interesting. I think it's eye-opening, and at the same time, I do think we put too much emphasis on it. We can.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think
because it's not the highest relationship either. Like it's supposed to be God first, spouse second.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why Paul gives that instruction of if you can do without it, great, because then it's just you and God.
Yeah.
And that goes back to my first question, where is marriage for everyone? No, like some people, it's just very much like, it just should be just them and God.
Yeah, enables them to focus on the things of the kingdom.
And focus on the things of the kingdom without distraction.
Yeah.
So, I agree with you that He doesn't always give the most instruction, but the instruction that He does give, I mean, don't you feel like it gets so much, like, I don't want to say backlash, because that's not the right word, but...
In today's society?
Yeah, like, those instructions about, like, husbands,
I
love
think
your
our flesh
wives,
doesn't like
and
it.
wives submit to your husband. Well, I know,
I just think our flesh doesn't like it. Our flesh doesn't want to submit. Our flesh doesn't want to love. It doesn't want to lay down. It wants to do what it wants to do. And so the parameters that Paul set, we'll be working on them through most people I think have been married as Christians for any duration. They died multiple times over. They kept laying down their life, and it got a little bit easier hopefully towards the end. I know our marriage has gotten easier. We don't argue as much, and I don't think we're trying to, because your flesh is trying to take that territory. It's really trying to, say this is my spot, almost like a chess,
Yeah.
And then after a while, you just kind of yield to it, and you go, well, you can have that spot if you really want that spot. I'm kind of stuck on this one over here. I really want that one, but you can have these three, and you start giving into things because you're yours anyway. It's still going to be yours, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like this isn't just my room, you know. The kitchen's not. It's yours in the sense of like you can decorate it however you want, but we all have to use it, you know.
Yeah.
I think we do that on the inside of us, you know. I think it's a bit of give and take. And
well, I think too, as you really get to know somebody, like really know them on all these different levels through marriage, because I mean, let's face it, that's what happens. It's not just like, oh, this level, this. I mean, it's several levels at the same time.
yeah.
You know, that as you get to know and you really do start to become one, you know, I think that's one thing that people get a little bit like, they're like, oh, the two shall become one. Sometimes that becoming one takes a little bit longer for some couples than other, but when you really start becoming to know each other like an extension of each other, it really does become easier, you know, like where I'm like, I know exactly 100% what you're not, there are things you're not going to like no matter what I do, the answer is going to be, he doesn't like that, you know, and vice versa. So, or, you know, like 100% he would agree with that, you know, and, you know,
and
so.
And I do think that there's like, you know, when you're talking about, you know, one flesh, like the two shall be one flesh, there's that initial coming together, intimacy, sexual piece, and then there's that, like you're talking about the longevity of they shall become one. That's really prophetic over time in that sense of like, you know, knowing what battles to fight and knowing what the other person's thinking, finishing each other's sentences, and even not being irritated the same about certain things. Like one of us would get sharp or disrespectful, and whereas before you would be like, you talk to me like that, and you just kind of flip out. Like I noticed this the other day that you didn't even mean anything by it. I think most of the time in our whole marriage you probably haven't meant anything by it, but you'll say something a certain way, and as a man, it's like disrespect is like the worst thing in the world. I know that'll probably be another video, but but it didn't. Excuse me, it didn't faze me, and I could tell the work had been done. Like I noticed it, but my heart didn't do anything, and I just went on and said, "Oh, Mom, just keep doing this other thing." And she's just frustrated right now. I'll come back around. That would not have happened
when the past
17 years. I mean, the first, probably the first 16 or 17.
No,
it's like
it's
these last
happened a
few.
little bit.
I don't know. He's done something recently, but
given extra grace.
Extra grace.
No, but I think that too is watching your, like, you know, sometimes we treat those that we love differently than you treat a stranger. Like you give a stranger more honor. Like you wouldn't just get like a certain, you wouldn't talk to anybody any kind of way. And I think sometimes that's a mistake in marriage. It's a huge mistake in marriage, that familiarity where you just are talking to each other any kind of way. Like you always want to honor each other. And like, so that's a good point to point out right there too, is just learning that honor and keeping that honor over the years too, and not just.
I've seen leaders focus on that. I think we could have had more of that, I think, early on. We weren't horrible, but I think we could have definitely had said, hey, don't cross this line. I didn't know about certain boundaries. So when we would get into fights, you'd say things, and I said really bad things. I don't think I do it as much now, but.
Well, and there's that could go into a whole nother video and talking about, like, the different things that we were battling against, because we know now on this side of it that there were generational curses and things like that we were fighting, not just each other. And it was taking us a while to identify that. And I would think that's another way to say, you know, when you're getting prepared for marriage, take care of the stuff before you get married. Like generationally, like your parents did this and they did that and whatever, and you feel like that's all normal marriage. No, make sure you get all that under the blood and covered and the best you can, so you can be prepared and really, you know, treat each other with honor and respect. And
I'd have to say I think this has been eye-opening for a first one.
It's been a long one. I didn't think we were going to go that far.
I can't see that.
It's like 30 minutes. I didn't expect it to be like 30 minutes.
Y'all have a wonderful night.
Night.
Love y'all.